Hello, and welcome to today's webcast, Azure Sentinel, brought to you by the Insight Microsoft commercial team. My name is Blair Loveland, your Microsoft Readiness Specialist at Insight, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we begin, I do want to cover a few housekeeping items. The webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you are looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or remove any of the windows that you have open. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions from this webcast will be captured, and there will be a Q&A during the last few minutes of the presentation. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. The help guide covers common technical issues. I would now like to turn this presentation over to our presenters, John Pontius and Riaz Javid-Butt. Guys, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for attending today. So like Blair said, we're going to spend some time talking about Azure Sentinel, which is Microsoft's new cloud security information and events management system, and where Azure Sentinel can bring the power of Microsoft's cloud to your security initiatives and how you can start taking advantage of the cloud scale for both your cloud products and your on-premise products. My name's John Pontius. I'm the manager of our Microsoft pre-sales unit with a team of architects designed to help you and your organizations not only figure out what Microsoft cloud technologies are right to solve your business challenges, but also to help you understand where Insight's expertise can help accelerate and jumpstart your journeys to the cloud. I'm joined today by Riaz. Riaz, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure, John. Hey guys, this is Riaz Javid-Butt. I'm the Microsoft Solution Architect at Insight, and I'm a Microsoft MVP for Office 365 and Microsoft Azure as well. I have been working with the Microsoft product team and the customers as well to help them design and implement their cloud solutions that are around, infrastructure side of the house as well as the security side of the house. That includes the Microsoft Threat Protection, or I would say the new name is Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and Microsoft Defender for Azure as well. Back to you, John.
Thanks, Riaz. So what we want to talk about today is a little bit about what Azure Sentinel is, do a little bit of a deep dive in how telemetry gets ingested, best practices and lessons learned with Riaz, and then talk a little bit about where Insight can assist you with Azure Sentinel. So we'll get right into it. Azure Sentinel is designed to address some common security operations challenges that we're seeing in the market today, which is there is an increased sophistication of threats. You're probably seeing this as your organizations. There's a lack of automation around detecting and remediating those threats. And you have many disconnected products that are resulting in a security footprint or telemetry that isn't necessarily cohesive or aligned and doesn't allow you to get to a holistic view of the environment. This is resulting in 44% of alerts estimated are never investigated. So there's lots of products out there that are trying to answer these questions. They don't necessarily talk to each other very well. They're riding on the backs of an increasingly sophisticated threat vector environment, and they're leading you to have, in your organizations, to have a lot more signal or noise than signal, right? You've got all of these alerts. You don't necessarily have the time or the expertise to look at all of them. And so important aspects of the telemetry that's being ingested are getting missed. And so what is Azure Sentinel? So Microsoft Azure Sentinel is Microsoft's cloud-native security information and event management system with intelligent security analytics for your entire enterprise. So what does that actually mean, right? So first off, it means that we're working with the power of cloud, which means that we have limitless cloud speed and scale. This is fundamentally different from on-premise security information and event management products that require, on-premise implementations that have hardware costs, that have life cycles and lifespans, et cetera. When you get started with Azure Sentinel, we're now doing all of this in the cloud, which means not only can we get deployed and start finding value faster, but as the organization scales, as the telemetry scales, as those threats scale, which unfortunately is what we're seeing, we're able to take advantage of the massive computing power of the cloud. Azure Sentinel allows you to bring your M365 and O365 data for free. This is, we'll talk a little bit about best practices, quick wins when we have conversation with Riaz. This is super valuable, right? Most products like this are going to usually look at some type of per gig ingestion pricing model that drives up prices significantly. But Microsoft is saying, hey, as you put more of your data into Microsoft 365, as you begin to collect those signals from the Office 365 product suite, from the EMS product suite with things like Azure Active Directory, P1 and P2, and Cloud App Security, and as you look at the Microsoft Defender suite of products and you can adjust data from there, that data is going to be zero rated against the ingestion plan. Obviously, Microsoft likes this. Like it encourages you to have more data and look at more useful telemetry from Office 365. But it also is in line with the vision that most organizations have as they move as much of their stack to these SaaS products. That, hey, if Microsoft's going to allow me to bring this data in, to look at this data holistically, to find correlations with this data against my other products, that's very valuable, and they're going to make it very attractive price-wise. It has easy integration with your existing tools. I'm going to talk about that, but most networking products, et cetera, can be pulled. That telemetry can either be pushed or pulled into Azure Sentinel, again, to give you that single pane of glass, that mythical single pane of glass view across your entire environment, ingesting data and signals from everywhere across your IT stack, whether that is cloud or on-premise. And finally, faster threat protection with AI by your side, right? So Microsoft is using the power of Azure, the investments that they've made in artificial intelligence and machine learning, the incredible trove of data that they have at their disposal, operating multiple cloud scale services, to bring to bear on your data, to make it, to be able to look at the signals that are coming across in your environment and be able to make really smart decisions about what is important, what needs to be remediated, what needs to be investigated, and what is potential noise. So again, when we talk about that signal to noise ratio, making sure that what you have in a security information and events management platform is actionable insights and intelligence about the threats in your environment, as opposed to just like a lot of alerts. And so they look at this, on a fairly, on this circular map where we're collecting data from all of these sources. We're using sophisticated dashboarding and intelligence to let you detect and hunt threats. We're using that same AI to guide you to investigate critical security threats. And then we're allowing you through the platform to, in many cases, rapidly respond and automate those protection requirements, to be able to actually do some remediation within the platform itself, as opposed to just having the alerting capabilities. So again, some quick data collection wins that we can talk about here are those free alerts that Microsoft allows you to take. So that's your Office 365 learning capabilities and telemetry through O365. That's Azure activities through existing plugins in the Azure infrastructure. And then that's first-party alerting through Microsoft Cloud App Security, Azure Advanced Threat Protection, Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, and then Azure Active Directory Information Protection, which are all being, as we speak, bundled into a more holistic Microsoft Defender platform. If you have a multi-cloud solution, right, and we are seeing more and more of this in organizations, that you don't want to have lock-in, you want to use multiple clouds, you want to use those clouds for where they make sense, right? You want to make sure that you're optimizing your infrastructure to the capabilities brought by your cloud provider, but that leads to a fragmented security footprint, IT footprint, that gets it hard to get the handle on all of the data coming in. So Azure Sentinel can ingest data very quickly from AWS if you're in one of those multi-cloud environments. And finally, connect and configure Azure diagnostic logs through policy, and deploy your Windows and Linux agents in Azure through a built-in policy that you can take advantage of. So make sure that you're getting that data in from all of those sources. And again, having that single pane of glass, that view across your cloud estate as a first and easy win for using Azure Sentinel. So again, we'll go through that circle just quickly, and then I want to talk about how some of this actually happens. So we're collecting data, again, at cloud scale. This is all cloud native. This all happens inside Azure to take advantage of the massive computing and storage capabilities that are there across all your users, devices, applications, and infrastructure, again, across the entire environment, so on-premise and in multiple cloud products. Detecting previously uncovered threats using analytics and threat intelligence. So again, making sure that we're getting actionable insights and we're separating what is really critical alerting from noise. Using that same AI to do threat hunting capabilities and activities at scale, taking advantage of the both investments and intelligence that Microsoft can bring to bear from decades of cybersecurity work and billions of dollars of investment. And then using built-in orchestration and automation to respond to those threats in time. So making it so that you have a cloud product, a platform with which you can bring in your data, find threats, and remediate against those threats all in one product. So I want to talk about some of the ways that the data gets in. I'm going to click through this, Riaz, so that you have the whole picture here. But if you want to talk about, see, that's the problem with clicking through all the pictures. Riaz, if you want to talk about this and share some of your experiences actually deploying Azure Sentinel and some of our largest customers, I think that'd be a good place to give everybody a little bit of understanding of how this actually works when you get into deployment and implementation.
Sure, John. First off, thank you. So when it comes to the data ingestion to the Azure Sentinel, I think the very first question when we start about SIEM solution or a source solution from a customer perspective, the first question that we always have from a customer side of the house is like, what business problem we are trying to solve, right? We already have a SIEM solution on premises, or we are planning to have a different SIEM solution, so why Azure Sentinel side of the house, right? So with Azure Sentinel, first off, the deployment, if we compare the deployment for Azure Sentinel with a typical traditional SIEM solutions with on-premises infrastructure, when we look at the deployment of the lifecycle from an infrastructure perspective, Azure Sentinel is built on top of the public cloud from Microsoft Azure, and it's from a deployment, it's literally like we can get it done, deployed, or enabled, or ready to ingest the data within like a week or 2 weeks time period, as compared to the traditional infrastructure deployments for a SIEM solution where we need to have our hardware in place, storage, especially the storage, because we are going to ingest a lot of data. And then on top of that, your data scientists or the expensive resources to create the models and detect the alerts and everything, which comes with Azure Sentinel by default, leveraging the Microsoft AI and the machine learning algorithms on the back end. And yes, we can have our own machine learning algorithms on top of that to detect and respond to the alerts as well. So once you actually have your Azure Sentinel enabled, right, that's the very first step. Once it's done, then the second phase is to ingest the data so that we can have visibility of what's going on within the organization, and we can respond to the threats that are occurring within our clouds like Office 365 or AWS or our on-premises network, right? So from a data ingestion perspective, we have multiple methods available. We can start with the free data ingestion that's coming with Azure Sentinel, like Office 365. You have built-in connectors available from Microsoft as part of the Azure Sentinel offering, where you can enable those connectors and start ingesting the data from different data sources like Office 365, Azure Active Directory, and the other tools as well. The second method is we can leverage the APIs to connect our data to the Azure Sentinel and have the insights to the applications and the users' activities as well. Third one, which is a common scenario, with the customers with an existing syslog server, or they have their on-prem solution where they are actually ingesting the data or dumping the logs, which is syslog, right? So you can have syslog to send the data to Azure Sentinel, and we can have all that data in a centralized workspace and that workspace is connected with your Azure Sentinel to give you the insights of what's going on from a user's perspective. Again, Azure Sentinel is not only a SIEM solution, but it does provide you these SOAR capabilities. So you can have your own security runbooks, and you can have your own automation on top of the Azure Sentinel to define what actions can be taken based on a typical alert that you're getting in Azure Sentinel. So Azure Sentinel machine learning algorithms, they do provide you the alerts based on the user's behavior. They do provide you the alerts with a predefined, event IDs that are originated into your network, and then you actually get a incident page, which is it can be a single alert that's causing an incident, or it can be a multiple alerts that's causing an incident for you, and it's a correlation from a SOC perspective. It's pretty straightforward, and as a SOC engineer, if I'm looking at that alert or an incident, I actually have all the relevant incidents over there that I can actually look into that and have the details of all the events that occur and that cause that incident as well. So this is the baselines from an Azure Sentinel perspective. When we define the deployments, it's always best practice that you start with a free data log ingestion and then monitor your data, what's coming into the Azure Sentinel, and then you actually start with, crawl, walk, and run methodology, and then you actually slowly and gradually move towards the automation and have your own security runbooks to protect and automatically, respond to the alerts that you actually have in your organization. John, back to you.
Yeah, so and I think that gives a lot of clarity around, some of the best practices that you've learned out there and how we can start to think about collecting the data. And I love the way you put that, the crawl, walk, run nature of adopting these technologies. I'm going to talk a little bit about, best practices and how you should think about threat detection and threat hunting, about the capabilities of both the machine learning and the artificial intelligence versus what you can see and dashboard out, and how that can help, bring some of that. And I think we saw on the first slide, although I'm not sure that I highlighted it, this incredible explosion of security professionals and the expense that has to be managed by organizations for more complex IT environments. How can Azure Sentinel help? I don't want to say reduce all of that down, but how can it help think differently about the requirements for security and organization using the tools available?
So I think the very first thing is, if you look at from a security perspective and the security processes perspective, like whenever you have an event, right, it goes through your security operations center's team, and you have your analysts looking into those events and responding back to those events as well. With the traditional, SIEM solutions in the past, you have a false positive events as well, and you have a fatigue of events for the security operations center's analysts to look at that. Just an example is, I'm just going to use one random example, like you have 2,000 users organization leveraging Office 365 or using the Office 365 for day-to-day, services like email, SharePoint, or Skype, Teams, OneDrive. And they do have a third-party single sign-on solutions as well. They have a minimum of, that I have seen with other customers as well, is like with a typical 2,000 users organization, they have at least 40 to 50,000 sign-ins in Azure AD only in one day. And if you actually have that sign-in from a correlation perspective with the on-premises activities and the other line of business applications access and the activities from a user perspective, either you need to have a capital expense to have a bunch of team members looking into those logs 24/7, or you actually have your own data scientist team to draft the machine learning algorithms, and they have their own models defined that can actually detect anomalies in that user's behavior and then generate an alert for you. Azure Sentinel, and this is what I have seen from working with the customers as well, is when we enable or deploy Azure Sentinel for the first time, and we'll start leveraging the free connectors or the connectors available from Microsoft and ingesting the free data from like 365, Azure Active Directory, we do see a bunch of data, right? Especially the user's activities and sign-ins that are coming in, and we do see the anomalies there from a user's activities perspective, which in the past, the administrators do not have access or they do not have a visibility to that data, because what they're saying is like Azure Active Directory is producing like 50,000 sign-in logs on a daily basis or 100,000 sign-in logs on a daily basis, and not as an administrator, nobody's actually going there and looking at those logs on a daily basis, because they know that like probably 99% of those sign-in requests are legitimate requests, right? So it's literally finding a needle in the sand to find out like, which 1% of the logs are not relevant or they are anomalies, and we need to work on that. And this is something that we have seen that, when we ingest the data from these cloud providers like Office 365, just an example, we do see that, 1% which was ignored in the past, we straight away have visibility into that using the machine learnings and the AI available as part of the Azure Sentinel, and the SOC teams can just focus on those 1% alerts versus, looking at all 100% logs and then trying to figure out what's going on and how they need to respond to those alerts.
Thanks, Riaz. And so last question I want to ask you is, some people on the call may already have some form of Azure Sentinel in place. They may already be ingesting some of that zero-rated, that free data from Microsoft, and they may be asking, what can we do to optimize this environment? What can we do to make sure that we've tuned this as best as possible to meet our business challenges and needs? I know that that's probably a customer by customer, organization by organization basis to think about this. But can you shed any best practices on, once you've got this in and once you're using it and now you're really looking at, how it can help you more, what should you think about from a fine-tuning perspective, from an optimization perspective?
So from an optimization perspective, I would say that, because the deployment of the Azure Sentinel, you can get it done literally like in few clicks, right? As far as you have the right information in place. I have been, working with some of the customers in the past as well, where they were able to deploy Azure Sentinel at their own. And then they actually have the free data ingestion to the Azure Sentinel from 365, Azure Active Directory, and the Microsoft Defender family as well, which is, their endpoints and Microsoft Defender for their identities and everything. The problem that I have seen is from a customer side of the house is they have all those, data ingestions into the Azure Sentinel, and they were trying to get the value out of it right away, right? But the problem is you are getting like literally millions of events into the Azure Sentinel, and based on those events, right, you are getting the alerts as well. And some of the alerts are translating into the incidents as well in the Azure Sentinel. So they actually have problems to, operationalize the solution. And this is the biggest challenge when it comes to SIEM as well, is to like how you actually operationalize the security tool for your organization. And that's where we had the working session, and we have some, ongoing projects and the activities with the customer as well, where we help them actually to operationalize. And again, this goes back to the same approach that I discussed earlier: crawl, walk, and run, versus you just, start with the run phase and you say that, it's straightforward integrations. I can just do this integration, ingest the data, and now I need a value out of it, right? So it's literally that you need to actually first have your data and have the machine learning and the AI and the Azure Sentinel to learn the user's behavior specific to your organization. This is a very important phase because the Azure Sentinel does have its own AI and a machine learning, but it still needs to learn about your user's behavior, right? Just an example is if you're ingesting the data for our organization and Riaz as a user, he's logging in from North Carolina, but probably after a week, I logged in somewhere in the West Coast, right? So in that scenario, Azure Sentinel is going to trigger that as an abnormal activity. But because of the Riaz role, probably he is traveling once in a month, right? So it's a normal activity. So that's why we need to give the time for the tool and the machine learning as well to understand and learn the user's behavior. And once that piece is there, then yes, you actually start, triage your alerts, and then you actually have your automations in place as well for common alerts that you're getting in your organization, right? Probably you're getting the very common alert of, risky sign-ins, just an example, right? And risky sign-in can happen because either your user is traveling a lot based on their job role requirement, or the other thing is there might be some network configuration issues in your organization where the user's traffic sometimes goes out from data center number 1, sometimes it goes out from data center number 2 and data center number 3. So from an Azure Sentinel perspective or your SIEM perspective, it's looking at that traffic coming from location 1, location 2, location 3, and it's assuming that this user, either he is traveling or this user is actually doing some abnormal activity. So it's going to generate the alert. So I just use that example because I have seen this risky sign-ins a lot with my customers. And what we have done is we actually have the automation on top of that if we had this type of alert, we want these predefined actions to be applied to the users and automatically resolve the alerts versus we have our SOC team to keep on working these basic alerts and all those type of things. This actually reduced the alert fatigue for like 80% for the customer.
Thanks so much, Riaz. Before I move into some of the ways that that Insight can help our clients and organizations take advantage of Azure Sentinel, is there anything that you'd like to add? Anything that I missed that's critical when we're thinking about adopting this technology?
I would just say that again, as you said in your presentation as well, like MCAS, Office 365, ATP, but now as Microsoft announces a new name of Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and Microsoft Defender for Azure. If you guys have, Office 365 or you have Microsoft Azure infrastructure in place, I would highly recommend to at least start ingesting the free data that you have as part of the Azure Sentinel, right? And just ingest the logs from 365 and Azure Sentinel to just have a high-level visibility or a demo so that you can understand your users' activities and behaviors. Because I do see that, the customers, they actually have the integrations with their own SIEM solutions. But again, a SIEM solution is not effective if it doesn't know what is right and what is wrong, right? And that's the biggest problem with the traditional SIEM solutions as well, where the integrations from an audit perspective, it's a tick mark that, we already have the integration in place and we are ingesting the logs to our SIEM solution. But do you have your models defined where you actually have what is normal versus abnormal activity? With Azure Sentinel, this is predefined, right? So you have your predefined machine learning algorithms from Microsoft and the AI on top of that, which actually trigger the alerts for you versus, because I literally have a few scenarios in the recent past with the customers where from an audit perspective, yes, we are ingesting all the logs from Office 365 and Azure Sentinel, from Azure to our SIEM solution. But do we have any alerts in the last 1 year? No, because there's no policy defined for what is normal versus abnormal or what should be the requirements or at least the scenario where the alert can be triggered. So this is very important when we actually talk about these SIEM solutions. It's not only just ingesting the data, its most important piece is to define your criteria as well to kick in the alert based on the user's activities.
And Riaz, just so that we can do this, live, we do have a question in the question and answer box I want to pose to you. Is this solution available for GovCloud? Has Azure Sentinel been available or has been enabled for the Azure G data center? Is it strictly commercial at the time?
I know that is available for the commercial tenants, but for the government tenants, I think it's in the private preview, but we can check and we can confirm back.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Riaz. I think that was super valuable. I appreciate your insights in actually working, with customers and organizations implementing, deploying Sentinel. I want to talk just briefly about some of the ways that, Insight can help our clients start adopting this technology and start using Azure Sentinel. And again, we take this back to, you've heard it here a couple of times, that kind of crawl, walk, run methodology. As you adopt the technology and then you implement, deploy, optimize the technology, and then you kind of innovate against the platform. And so we have a number of offerings and deep expertise, obviously, around Azure Sentinel that range from our Azure Sentinel jumpstarts, which I'll talk more in depth about in a second, to our Azure Sentinel health checks, where we go through quite a bit of what Riaz talked about on that optimize motion, where we're thinking about, how can you really start to take advantage and make the platform work for the specifics of your organization and solve your challenges. And then finally, a whole suite of Azure Sentinel consulting services. So custom app integration or custom log ingestion, where we're, really starting to bring in multiple data sources, multiple policies from all of your IT stack, again, whether that's in the cloud, in multiple clouds, or on-premise. And so we really can assist you across the entire spectrum of your journey operationalizing security with Azure Sentinel. But if you are just getting started, which I imagine some of you are, I want to talk a little bit about how we think about jump-starting that journey and how we think about helping you find value in cloud solutions. So Insight has a number of jump starts. Azure Sentinel is one of them, but we have broad spectrum across the Azure stack, including, getting started with platform services, getting started with DevOps. But we're thinking about, these are concise engagements. They generally last less or about a week. We provide adoption using a combination of knowledge transfer and a purpose-built security-first deployment. So actually giving your teams the necessary knowledge to understand and operationalize the solution, but also providing you a framework where you can start executing to your business objectives on that platform. And what these are designed to do is prevent you, I think Riaz had some good examples of clients and organizations that ran head first into Azure Sentinel because it's such a unique and valuable solution, and ended up having to say, well, wait a second, we're not actually finding the value that we thought we would. And our jump starts are designed to accelerate that time to value by making sure that in 6 months, 9 months, a year, you're not left saying, hey, if I had known about Azure Sentinel 12 months ago, what I know now, I would have done things totally different. I would have saved myself a lot of time and headache and expense, and making sure that we're getting you started on the right foot. So our jump starts combine a knowledge transfer, roadmap development to talk about specific implementations, and then a working environment that you can use to grow and expand the value you find in the solution. So our Azure Sentinel, and let's see, look at this, I'm using old nomenclature, but our Azure, old slides, but our Azure Sentinel is, we're going to work with you to roadmap your Azure Sentinel implementation. We're going to do a knowledge transfer and talk you through what we talked about on the call today, but also significantly more. And finally, we're going to leave you behind Azure Sentinel, where we're configuring that workspace, ingesting that data for the zero-rated data source telemetry sources. So that's Office 365, M365, EMS, and Azure Active Directory. So we'll take those Azure Active Directory logs, which are super valuable. And then we're also going to work with your team to develop best practices for your organization on threat hunting and threat detections. So walking you through how to use Azure Sentinel AI and machine learning, and how to use dashboards to get that value out of Azure Sentinel quickly, start really finding actionable intelligence, and start doing some of that threat detection in Azure Sentinel, again, in under a week. And so if you're just getting started in your Azure Sentinel journey and you're looking for a partner that can help you take that to the next step very quickly, we have, again, very compelling offers around that, as well as wherever you are in your Azure Sentinel journey. If you're beyond that, we can also assist you with some of those optimizations and unique custom configurations. And finally, for organizations that are that want a holistic view from a security perspective of their environment, but would like to have, we talked about the ongoing expense and the rising expense of security professionals, we also offer managed security services powered by Azure Sentinel. So we will work with you to configure that Azure Sentinel environment. We will work with you to ingest the logs and the telemetry that's important for your organization, and then we will monitor that on an ongoing basis and alert you to any threats that that when we're looking through the data, we think need to be alerted based on, Microsoft's best practices, Insight's own internal best practices, and also the things that are valuable for your organization. So if you're interested in having Insight manage that from top to bottom, powered by the cloud scale and power and analytics and machine learning of Microsoft, we also offer those managed security services, and I encourage you to reach out either to me or to your account executives to discuss that. And with that, I think that brings us to the Q&A. So I appreciate, before you get into this, I appreciate everybody's time today. I hope that this was valuable to you, and I hope that, if you are interested in exploring Azure Sentinel, reach out to myself, reach out to Riaz, reach out to your Insight account executive and say, we're looking for Azure Sentinel. We were on the webinar, and we will absolutely start discussing the solution and where we can assist. So with that, it does not look like we have any current question and answers Q&A other than the one that we already talked about, which is the GovCloud, but I will wait a few minutes to see if anything comes through.
All right, thank you, John. So yeah, definitely if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the Q&A. And John, I do see a couple questions that came through here. The first one is, do you offer ongoing services? Actually, hold on. There's three I see here. The last two look like they're similar in scope, but the first one is, what is Sentinel able to ingest at no cost?
Yeah, so we can, and Riaz, because I will miss stuff, so I'm hoping that you can clarify. But basically, the stuff that Azure Sentinel will ingest at absolutely no cost is the Office 365 data, the MCAS data, what is now the Microsoft Defender data, but which used to be like the Azure ATP, Microsoft Defender ATP suite, as well as information protection. And then with very little cost, you can start ingesting the Azure Active Directory logs, which again, in terms of quick wins and correlation, we would absolutely recommend to get those login signals. Riaz, am I missing anything that they'll include?
Just one thing is, from an Azure Active Directory perspective, there are two different things. One is the activity logs and one is sign-in logs, right? And you do actually get your sign-in logs into the Azure Sentinel, but if you want to have a deep dive into your logs of users' activities and everything like that, then it's a very little cost, as John said, that you can actually get those logs into the Azure Sentinel as well.
Perfect, thank you. And the last two questions, again, I'm going to read them both because I think they kind of fall on the same line of thought. We have Sentinel installed, but we don't think it's optimized properly. Do you provide services to help tune and optimize? And then also, do you offer ongoing services once it is up and running?
Yes, absolutely, to both. So I would encourage you, if we can actually, I'll do that. Blair, if you can capture who asked that question and email address, we will reach out. We have both of those. You can see we have that health check, which is really an optimization and tuning project to help you understand what you've got there right now, what could be done to make it better, what can be done to make it, again, find more value for you. And then from an ongoing perspective, yes, we do offer, if you are looking for fully managed security solutions that are powered by Azure Sentinel, we can do that as well. So across the spectrum of both those questions, can we help you with your existing implementation and getting the most value and bang for your buck? 100%. If you're looking for, I want to give this to somebody and have them optimize and tune it for me on an ongoing basis as a managed service, we can do that as well.
Perfect, thank you. And another question just dropped into the box here. How well does Azure Sentinel integrate with ASC?
I can take that question. So Azure Sentinel and ASC. I mean, I have this question many times from my customers as well, because Azure Security Center is also collecting the data, right? It's also collecting the data. It's giving you the insights within your operating system as well as your Azure footprint only, right? So look at the Azure Sentinel as a broad picture where you are ingesting the data from your Office 365, right? Or I would say Microsoft 365 Security Center. You are ingesting the data from your third-party data sources, and then you are ingesting the data from Azure Security Center as well. Azure Security Center is more focused, or I would say the innovation that's coming into the Azure Security Center is more around cloud security, posture management, data security, as well as your cloud workload protection. Whereas the Azure Sentinel, it is actually leveraging the data coming in from Azure's Security Center, and then it's actually applying the machine learning and AI on top of that to give you more insights. Because Azure Security Center is actually looking at your posture management, your data protection capabilities. It's not going to trigger anything based on a specific events within your operating system or within your user's profile. So yes, Azure Security Center data can be ingested into the Azure Sentinel, and Azure Sentinel does leverage that data to give you more insights into the security posture of the organization.
Perfect. Thank you. So I don't see any additional questions in the chat box here. So John, Riaz, any closing comments before I wrap us up here?
No, other than to say, obviously, thanks everybody for joining, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions around what we discussed here today. If you'd like to talk about a deeper dive and you'd like to talk about, where Azure Sentinel can help you in your security journey. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you. And everybody, please keep an eye out for an invite for next month's webinar starring John Pontius and crew. It's going to be featuring Power BI. As you probably know, there's tons of data out there, lots of data points, more than ever before. So learning how to properly manage that and analyze that for your business decisions is key, and how Insight can help you out. So you should be receiving invites from your Insight account executives for that webinar here in the next several days. If you don't, please reach out, and we can make sure we get you registered for that super webinar as well. Other than that, we hope you found today's webinar extremely helpful. I know I did. I found it very insightful as well. And we do appreciate everyone joining, and we hope you have a great rest of the day today. Thank you.